Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Live VU Virtual Learning Academy program. Today's presentation is on easy dessert recipes. So we have with us our host today from the Grand Rapids Area Senior Center, Sharon Parsons. And Sharon's going to share with us how to make peanut butter and jelly bars. So please welcome Sharon.
Hi. First off, I can't take any credit for the recipe. It's I got it ages ago, and it's from the Taste of Home. Taste of Home, they used to do a recipe magazine. They may still, but I don't get it. But it's just simply called peanut butter and jelly bars. And I have to say that I have a friend who works in the field of science, and he considers recipes a mathematical formula, and you can't deviate from anything about a recipe. I, on the other hand, look at recipes as guidelines, and I kind of tweak them all the time. So this one, there's a couple things that if you have something on hand, you can certainly substitute it for part of the ingredients in this recipe, or you can substitute things the jelly, especially if you don't, it calls for raspberry jelly. If you don't like that, obviously just use a different kind of jelly. The first ingredient that it calls for is a tube of peanut butter cookie dough. I have had this recipe for years and am recently finding out that some stores have discontinued carrying the tube of peanut butter cookie dough, or the stores that still have the label on the shelf that says peanut butter cookie dough seem to not be stocking the peanut butter cookie dough in a tube. So I recently found a substitute in the baking aisle. This is just Betty Crocker peanut butter cookie mix. Okay, so it just adds one more step to the recipe. Instead of just taking the cookie dough out of the tube and flattening it on the bottom of the pan, you just have to make this first in a bowl, and it simply calls for vegetable oil, water, and 1 egg. So it's not a lot of extra ingredients. You probably have them on hand if you can't find the peanut butter cookie dough in a tube. So that's what I use for this recipe. So I mix this up, and you mix it up in the bowl, and then you just flatten it in the bottom of a 9x13 baking pan or casserole dish. And it seems really thin at the time. Even yesterday when I did this, I was just like, wow, that just seems really thin. But again, it rises when it bakes. And so you put that in the bottom of the pan, and then it calls for a 1/2 cup of peanut butter chips. And these are Reese's peanut butter chips. Again, that's a guideline to me. I believe a cup is 8 ounces, and this bag is 10 ounces. I'm not going to measure out 2 ounces of peanut butter chips. So I just open the envelope and spread them all over the cookie dough that's in the bottom of the peanut. 2 more ounces of peanut butter chips is a good thing. So empty that onto the top, and then bake just like it says on the cookie dough tube or the envelope. And then this is what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. It's just the cookie dough with the chips are not like completely melted. They still look like peanut butter chips when it's done baking. So once you have that done and you let it cool, then it calls for a container of buttercream frosting, and it calls for creamy peanut butter. We're not allowed to have any peanut butter in our home other than Jif creamy peanut butter for my husband. We don't do knockoff brands of peanut butter. So we have to use Jif. So you just, it takes the entire container of this, which I'll put in the bowl, and then you add a 1/4 cup of the creamy peanut butter. So there's the frosting. And again, hang on, I'm gonna grab another spoon. I could measure a 1/4 cup of peanut butter, but I'm just gonna eyeball it. So we put that in there. and just mix this together.
Is it pretty hard to mix? Is it stiff?
It got to be that I would take, we met once a month, and I would take these, or someone else would make them, so we had them at every meeting. So it was just kind of a staple. We met in the late afternoon, and if people missed a lunch or whatever, we always had these available. All right. So that's done. And that's what it looks like with the frosting and the peanut butter mixed together. Then it calls for a 1/4 cup of seedless raspberry jam or grape jelly. And again, you can do this with whatever jelly that you like. I simply have Crocker grape jelly. So again, it calls for a 1/4 cup, and I'm not going to measure that out. But you just take some dollops of the jelly with a spoon. And again, you can tweak this to how much jelly you want. So put a few scoops of that, spoonfuls, and then spread it around. It does help if the jelly's at room temperature, actually. There's the new jar that I had just opened, so it is at room temperature. I think it spreads a little bit better. So we have that. Spread with a spoon. So it's all on there, like this. And then the fun part of making it pretty is you can take a knife and just make designs in it and go back and forth in different directions. And it just mixes up the jelly more, and it just kind of gives it a prettier look. And there it is, all done. So voila, very simple, and you can cut it into squares just like brownies. A couple good things about it is, like I did for this presentation, you can make the base with the cookie dough and the peanut butter chips the day before, and let it sit overnight if you only had that much time. I did it obviously to show the different stages. But the other good thing is that you can make the whole thing the day ahead and cut it up. It is easy to make ahead, and it keeps for several days after you make it. So you just cut that into squares and serve it. That's the completed peanut butter and jelly bars.
Yeah, and you don't need to refrigerate that, right? Like it can just be left on the counter.
Correct. I suppose you could if you wanted to, but you don't need to.
What if it would taste good frozen? Freeze them and then eat them. I don't know.
I guess you could do that.
Yeah.
Sharon, I have a question. My computer cut out. Did you put the chips on top and then bake it, or did you bake it, then take it out of the oven and then put the chips on top?
You put the chips on before you bake it.
Before you, okay.
Yeah, but it's not in there long enough that they completely melt and don't look like peanut butter chips.
Okay, all right.
But they do sink into the batter a little bit, so it firms them in there.
All right, thanks.
I guess the question
is good.
Yeah, how long do you bake it for? Like that first layer?
Well, again, it would depend on which peanut butter cookie thing you're using, but whatever the package says. I think this one, if it was just a cookie, well, first of all, this was supposed to be cookies. So it said you were supposed to make it into 36 balls and put it on the tray, which I didn't do. It's just spread flat in the bottom of the casserole dish. So it took longer. And then it takes a little bit longer because the chips are on it. So I think it called for like 10 to 12 minutes for cookies, and it probably took closer to 20. Just when it starts to get brown around the edge, it's done.
Yeah, thank you. Because, yeah, that kind of varies the cooking amount. So,
right.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording today. So thank you for sharing that great cookie recipe with us. And we will have it available for everyone on our YouTube channel, Wood County Committee on Aging, Inc.